Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the most important living creatures on the planet.
Are you kidding me? That gigantic blowhard? Ooh, look at me. I've got a nose on the top of my head. If anyone should be getting that prize, it's us. Down here, weak-minded sponge. If you're looking for the most important living creatures on the planet, well, here we are. Plankton.
Prove it!
Do you doubt me, Sheldon J. Plankton? Okay, take Cousin Marvin there. He may look like a dumb tiny plant, and he is, but dumb Marvin and his planktonic plant friends make up nearly half the oxygen you're breathing right now. And you thought rainforests were doing all the work. You love all this big stuff, don't you? That's why you watch all the fancy TV shows. Oh, look at the cute penguins. They're just like us. Yeah, laugh it up, Flippy. Because none of that stuff would exist without plankton like me. I'm a zooplankton, a tiny animal just like all these guys. Hi, Mom! Mom! So my friends and I, we eat the dumb Marvins. Then small fish eat us, bigger animals eat them, all the way up the food chain. Even the blue whale, the biggest animal that's ever lived, usually likes nothing more than a great mouthful of stupid krill. What this means is, no plankton, no sea life. No Krabby Patties, no sushi, no SpongeBob, that wouldn't be bad, no nothing! Do we feel important to you now? The food you eat, the air you breathe? Come on, people! All right, hold on, I'm not finished! Crude oil. Ancient dead plankton trapped in the rocks. You'd be shrimped without that, right? Without all the driving and the flying and the electricity? Ooh, look! You can even see us from space. We win! We win!
Plankton, a thank you would be nice.
This message brought to you by Nickelodeon and the BBC Earth. And Nickelodeons get dirty.
They look like unfamiliar worlds meandering around some cold and distant star. But these are living things, plankton, tiny sea creatures, so small they're almost invisible to the naked eye. Individually, they are mere specks in a vast ocean. But together, they are part of a grander story, one that affects us in ways you wouldn't necessarily expect. The name plankton comes from a Greek word meaning wanderer. And that's what they are, drifters. They can't fight the ocean currents. They just drift. Plankton get their energy in a couple of different ways. Phytoplankton draw energy from sunlight, like plants, and produce oxygen along the way. This one's called a diatom. These are tiny, but super abundant. They produce about half the oxygen we breathe. These are dinoflagellates. They get their energy from the sun too, but they can steer themselves through the water just a bit with those little appendages you see called flagella. The second group is called zooplankton. Most of these are way, way bigger than the phytoplankton. And unlike most phytoplankton, they need to actually eat. You can see how this one creates little currents to pull the food in towards its mouth. Some plankton drift forever. Others, like these, grow up into something else. But all of them are about to be called into action. It's called upwelling, and it happens when wind and currents converge. Nutrients surge up from the deep ocean and toward the surface, jump-starting an explosion of life, a bonanza. The plankton reproduce at an amazing rate. Krill and fish feast on plankton, birds and sea lions feast on fish, and so do we. This is where most of the world's seafood comes from. And then, just as quickly as it all began, the winds die back, the upwelling slows, and the frenzy subsides. What's left, the remains of this giant oceanic bacchanalia, drift back to the deep, waiting for their next moment in the sun.
Radiolarians, acantharians, and foraminiferans are single cells. They are voracious carnivores, but radiolarians and acantharians can also be friendly to other cells, creating long-lasting symbiotic relationships with microalgae. Some radiolarians, such as these colosome, live in colonies of thousands, embedded in a jelly loaded with millions of symbiotic algae. It's easy to distinguish these three kinds of protists. Foraminiferans build roundish shells made of calcium carbonate, while radiolarians and acantharians make silica or strontium skeletons in the shape of needles or shields. The calcium and silicate structures are very resistant. When foraminiferans and radiolarians die, shells and skeletons sink to the bottom of the sea, forming layers of marine sediments. Over millions of years, their shells and skeletons fossilized. With the movements of the Earth's crust, they formed cliffs and mountains. Today, they are found in the stones of our buildings and monuments. These tiny fossils reveal the geological story of the Earth.